Hi, and welcome back to the Save the Gen Z. COVID-19, the invisible enemy that has completely changed everything we do across this world, including education. Billions of students across the world have seen big changes in how they learn, including here in Ontario, with all students now learning online. This has raised a lot of questions from students who are either confused, struggling, or just wondering how they can do better. To help me answer some of your questions today, I'm pleased to be joined by Sam Abbott. He is the Public Board Vice President of OSTA and a student trustee. Before we get started with our discussion, please subscribe to the channel and consider hitting that notification bell. So, Sam, thank you for coming on.
Happy to be here.
All right, so how about we start off with you telling us a bit about who you are and what made you want to be a student trustee?
Yeah, sounds good. So, yeah, I'm the student trustee for Renfrew County District School Board, and I've been the student trustee for the past 2 years. Additionally, I'm also the Public Board Council Vice President for OSTA ACO. I got that position last year in May at our AGM. Also, I've been just kind of as a part of who I am, I've been involved in student government, public speaking, basically for as long as I've had the opportunity. Just as long as there's been opportunities to speak in public, and whether it was Legion speeches or whatever it was, I was always involved in those type of things. And then basically how I became a student trustee is when I was in grade 10, my school president reached out to me and he thought I was a good fit for the position. I didn't know anything about it, but I am glad I enjoyed the position ever since that moment. So that's kind of who I am and a little bit about me.
Yeah, I can relate to you. I love public speaking. That's one of the reasons why I started this channel, is to be able to,
Yeah.
show the community who I am, and I take public
Mhm.
speaking roles at church and at school whenever I can too. It's fun. I can't relate to people who hate public speaking. I just can't.
Yeah. I've noticed that you have me in the midst of a lot of great interview people. So I'm right in the middle of Derek Sloan and Leslie Lewis and
Yes.
President. So I'm honored to be on the show or the channel.
Well, I'm glad you accepted the offer to come on. So we started hearing about COVID-19 in early January. Back then, was the ministry thinking about the possibility of shutting down schools for the rest of the year?
That's an excellent question. The ministry has been taking this entire process step by step. So it's kind of hard to say whether or not they were anticipating it to go on this long. I really don't think anyone was expecting this. They didn't rush to an early decision. I know that for sure. The reason that we were receiving this announcement so late that schools would be closed to the end of the year was because I think the ministry didn't want to make the wrong announcement at the wrong time. I think it was a very wise move because no one really knew where this pandemic was going to take us. Even on a call with Minister Lecce a couple weeks ago, he still didn't have an absolute answer on returning to school this year. So I think they were trying to leave the window open just in case they could return this year. And I'm certain that from the beginning, the ministry was developing plans, putting together measures for shutting down schools for the rest of the year. And right from the beginning, they were establishing new methods of learning in the case that schools remain closed. And already, right from the beginning, they were reaching out to OSTA for ideas regarding the possibility of schools remaining closed. All in all, I would say that there's plans being formulated from the beginning, but it's kind of been hard to say from the beginning if they were going to close schools for the rest of the year. I think it wasn't the anticipated decision, but unfortunately, it's what was the result.
For sure. I mean, me personally, I didn't expect this would happen. I had a friend who was telling me he thought schools would close, and I told him he was crazy. And then, a few weeks later, I'm at a conference and I'm staying at a hotel, and I turn on the TV and I see schools are going to be closed for 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, just 2 weeks. It's probably going to be just 2 weeks.
Right.
And then, it started being a month, and then 2 months. And then after a while, we started getting the clear picture that it was going to be for the rest of the year.
Right.
So students had already missed a lot of school due to the teacher strike. So they had missed about a week. And on top of that, they missed another 2 weeks due to the pandemic. So why wasn't the school year extended into the summer?
Yeah, that's another great question. So first of all, this year was definitely not how I envisioned my last year of high school going. I can speak and say that I was not anticipating that my last semester would be cut so short. And in my school specifically, we missed far more than a week because the educational assistants in my high school are in ETFO, and all the rest of the staff are in OSSTF. So that meant that I was missing every single time OSSTF or ETFO went on strike. So I was probably at school with all my work between COVID and everything that I do. I was probably at school less than 20 days the entire semester. So it certainly wasn't what I was anticipating this year. But to address your question, extending the school year is a lot easier said than done. The ministry has announced optional summer programs for those who desire it. We haven't seen a clear outline of what those are specifically going to be. But I don't think that in-person classes in the summer was ever an option for this year. Firstly, we're seeing like a vast decrease in the number of students who are engaging in their learning. Like there's so many students right now who are not logging on to their online platforms, participating in the work. So many students, I think, are taking their education a little bit more lightly right now, just given the current situation. The minister did highlight, though, in his announcement last week that the ministry will be working towards strengthening summer learning opportunities. So while we're not seeing an extension of the school year, I think we'll see an extension of opportunities for students to continue their education. And I believe that for those who are interested, they will have opportunities available to continue learning, especially for those who are concerned about kind of preparing for university and having some of that prior knowledge. I think that there will be options in place for them as well.
Well, that's good because I mean, I've heard, I don't go to a public school, but I heard when I was on the bus or at the mall, I would overhear students being like, just before the whole pandemic started, being like, man, we've already missed so much school. And then pandemic came on. But if the government is confident that most people who are committed can finish the work on time, then it's good that they've also created summer learning opportunities. So a question that kind of follows up on that is a lot of students are worried about their grades dropping due to this pandemic. What has the Ministry of Education done to accommodate students whose grades have dropped?
Right. Well, this one's a little bit easier to answer because there has been a clear outline for this. The ministry has announced that no student's grades should be negatively impacted during this time. So anyone who's concerned about their grades dropping, like that's already been kind of wiped out. So whatever grade you had at midterm should be at least the grade that you receive on your final report card. And that goes for all public schools. So everyone does have the ability to increase their grades during the. I don't think that the announcement that grades cannot drop is a reason to take the foot off the gas pedal. There's a lot of students right now who, as soon as they heard their grades can't drop, they're like, okay, well, I'm just going to stop learning. That's not the route to go, and I would strongly advise against that because you need that learning to continue on in your future.
Absolutely.
But your grades, for the time being, should not be able to drop. And so anyone who's concerned about that, and there's reason for concern. There's some students out there who are trying, but they don't have great access to Wi-Fi and they don't have the proper technology. So I understand for them, but for those who do have access to this, please continue to keep learning because you need that learning, and it's worth trying to increase your grade as well. So.
No, absolutely. And I thought that the move to not drop grades past midterm was very compassionate. And, I think it's just unfortunate that it only applies to public schools. So my school has decided not to do that. And I have friends telling me that they're failing. I find it very unfortunate. So what, I'm planning on doing is emailing our board of directors and asking them to consider this. But in the meantime, people do need to keep pushing. It's hard, but we've been put in this for a reason, and our job is to push through and get over it. So prior to the pandemic, we had seen the provincial government pushing for more e-learning. And now that we have seen what full e-learning looks like, do you think that we will see more or less e-learning?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that the COVID-19 situation is going to be part of the segue into increased learning in the years to come, e-learning, sorry. And while the union agreements that were just made clearly outlined that students only need 2 mandatory e-learning credits throughout all of high school, We are now seeing that software is being upgraded due to necessity. Resources are being given out to students. Teachers are becoming familiar with the software. So literally everyone has one option right now, and that is e-learning. So to go back and try to say, okay, we don't need e-learning is going to be very difficult because right now it's the only option. So I see it being in the future as one of the viable options when in-person classes cannot take place. And because it's such a versatile kind of option for that, I think that we're going to see an increase in the usage of it. I would quickly like to reference some work that OSTA did on this topic early on in the school year, where we reported on a survey that was sent out last May that received an overwhelming majority of students who were against mandatory e-learning. So if the ministry wants to continue with mandatory e-learning, they need to work on ensuring that all students have equitable access to the platform. That's one of my main concerns, because we saw through that survey that not every student is going to have access to the e-learning platform. And I think that's one huge concern. So I'm certainly not against e-learning as an individual. I think it's a valuable tool. And I think it's one that lends itself to the future of our culture. If you look at the kind of the direction things are going, there's a direction towards technology. My concern is on the access to the tool. And I'll be interested to see that the route that the ministry takes in the coming years, especially seeing as there will definitely be students during this time who do not have access to the online learning, and they will need to be provided for in the future. So we'll see, but I definitely feel like e-learning is going to be increased in the coming years.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I kind of expected the opposite, but
Right.
But you made a good point about equity, and I think that's why it was good that the government gave iPads with Rogers data to low-income students. But even with that, like other non-public schools, like at my school, we have these, families of 5 and 6, and they have one computer in the whole family. So when we have, like virtual classrooms, it's kind of hard for everybody to get together, and I think that has been a struggle for a lot of people.
For sure.
On a more funny side, how Doug Ford failed to get his e-learning, and now he's probably just laughing like, haha, look who's doing e-learning now.
Exactly.
So when students return to school in September, can they expect to see changes? And if so, what type of changes can they expect to see?
Well, that's a tough one. There's still a lot of uncertainty about the future, not just in education, but in everything as a whole. I think there's just a lot of uncertainty. Can people expect to see changes? I think the unfortunate truth is yes. They can expect to see changes. I have no idea what the route the ministry will take as of yet. Lecce is going to be having a call with the OSTA executives soon to kind of give us a little bit of an update, ask for some insight. But I think that the impacts of this virus are going to take a very long time to recover from in many different ways. I'm certainly hoping that schools will be back to in-person classes in some form in September. I'm already hearing doubts about that. I mean, I'm personally heading off to Queens next year, and I'm already hearing from Queens that we're not going to be having in-person classes, maybe a mixture of online and a little bit of like maybe some labs or something like that. However, as a general expectation, I would think it's safe to say at least increased health precautions, more sanitation, perhaps an e-learning option for students who have at-risk family members. I know that people are looking for normal again, and trust me, so am I, but we're up against something that we've never faced. So be prepared for normal life to take its time returning. So unfortunately, I can't really give you a definite answer for this one. And honestly, I'm not so sure even the ministry for the time being could give you a definite answer. It all depends on the path this virus takes and the development of preventive measures against it. But I think it's going to be a while before we return back to some of the normalcy.
Yeah, I think it unfortunately will. And, it's disappointing because I miss normal life. But, I think this situation has put a lot of people into realizing how great life was before, through and you brought up university. You're not the only one. I have a friend that lives in Stouffville, which is kind of a boring Toronto suburb, and he goes to McGill, lives downtown Montreal. So he's pretty disappointed that McGill is switching to online courses. He's actually considering taking a gap year because university is hard, but university online, that's a complete
different ballgame.
So let's end this with a more personal question. I know that you are a devout Christian. Can you tell us how your faith has guided you through this pandemic?
Yeah, I really appreciate this question right here. I'm an apostolic Pentecostal, and my dad pastors our church here in Petawawa. Probably not many people have heard where Petawawa is, but it's kind of a small town, a little bit north of Ottawa. So our faith, I really feel, has really brought my family through this situation. Every morning we gather together for a time of devotion and prayer, and we've also been doing online services for our church. You know, it's a common misconception that only uneducated, weak people can have faith in God, but I'm proud that I have full belief in his existence. So our situation,
Amen.
Our interactions with people may change. The way we see normal life, it may change as well. But one thing that will never change is God. So I trust in the one who's got control of this entire crisis and has a purpose even in the pandemic. And I'm not here to try to force my faith on anyone, but I will attest to the fact that for me personally, having a God who I can look to even when I don't understand what's going on makes all the difference.
Absolutely. And I have to say to those who are watching who are feeling lost and despair, you know, even if you don't believe in God, God believes in you, and God loves you, and God has a plan for your life. So, you know, I urge you, if you are feeling lonely, if you're feeling sad, reach out to him, and he will always be there for you.
Right. Yeah, no problem.
Well, Sam, thank you for coming on and discussing the future of education with me.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me on, Ellie. I was happy to answer some of your questions, and I think they were great questions, so thank you.
I hope that you enjoyed our discussion. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you, and God bless you.